Welcome to the program, everyone. Support comes from 120 Life. High blood pressure doesn't always feel urgent until it hits close to home. And I've had someone that I love dealing with it. And lately, I've been paying more attention to my own numbers, too. Here's the truth. High blood pressure is the number one risk factor for mortality. And half of all adults have it. Most people don't even feel it. February is American Heart Month. If your resolution slipped, that's okay. This is a simple way to reset. 120 Life is a once a day functional drink, and it's made from superfruit juices that help support healthy blood pressure. It's not a pill. It's not a gimmick. It's refreshing, easy, and consistency really matters here. Hundreds of doctors recommend it. Try it for 2 weeks. Check your numbers and see the difference. Go to 120 Life, 120 Life, and use the code DON for 20% off. That's 120life.com. Code DON. Now, these statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always check with your doctor. Let's get started. And let's get started, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to the Don Lemon Show. Happy that you are here. We are on the move, so maybe a little bit glitchy every now and then. But this story that we are going to discuss, for two stories. One involves Hillary Clinton. As we reported to you this morning, there was breaking news. She was testifying in Chappaqua, New York, or at least being deposed about Jeffrey Epstein, which is bizarre because Hillary Clinton doesn't really have any ties to Jeffrey Epstein, not as many as Donald Trump. And then there is another story that is breaking that I have been telling you guys about. And I have been saying to everyone, I'm concerned. My spidey senses are going off. They're always right. Donald Trump is seeking executive power over elections and is urged to declare an emergency. It is a Washington Post exclusive. So there it is. We're going to talk about that. But first, we want to get to the Hillary Clinton story because the former Secretary of State briefly halted her closed-door testimony, a deposition, so to speak, in the House Oversight Committee today after learning that a Republican attendee had leaked an image from inside the deposition, prompting an eruption in the room as her lawyers vociferously objected. Now, let me just say this. I put out today on my Substack that these are not serious people. And I pointed out this morning in our live that it was Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and James Comer. Now, if you... look, in order to get more unserious people, I don't know if you can go further than that. It has been reported that Nancy Mace is having a public breakdown. Lauren Boebert, as you know, is not a serious person, and she loves to give handies in theaters. Hey, that's your thing. You like the public. You like the little wankety wank in the public. That's your business. But if you get caught, I'm just saying, and also, if you're a public person, maybe you should be more careful. Someone asked her about that today. We're going to show that to you in just a minute. But it was halted. And this is the photograph that she took inside of the thing. We have the photograph by itself. I don't want to show that photograph. Where's the one that we have? This is the photograph that was taken inside of the thing. And then there was a tweet about who it was from and what was going on. But it was Lauren Boebert of Colorado. She shared this photograph of Mrs. Clinton answering questions, which was posted on social media by Benny Johnson, a right-wing podcaster. Mrs. Clinton's attorney immediately asked to pause the proceedings, noting that the former Secretary of State had been denied her request for a public hearing. They wanted to bring the cameras in and bring in the media, which I think they should have after this egregious lapse in judgment and protocol. I wonder if there's some sort of ethics violation that is going on that can be had against her. It's unbelievable. So I want to bring in now Charles Coleman. Charles Coleman is an MS Now legal analyst, a former prosecutor, and a civil rights attorney. Charles, welcome. I didn't do my due diligence here because I want to tell people hit the like and thumbs up because it affects the algorithm, as you know, Charles, because you have a digital show as well. And more people become aware of our conversation. And that's what the algorithm does. It pushes it out if people are engaged. So hit the like and hit the thumbs up. Lots of folks are watching today. Charles, they're tuning in because you're on the show. I know that that's what's happening. Am I a little glitchy here? I'm a little glitchy because I am actually on the move today.
Little glitchy, Don, but always good to join you, and I can hear you fine. So thank you for having me. And since we're here, everyone, make sure you check out the Brothers Briefing along with myself and Richard Fowler every Wednesday on IG Live at 7:30. It is news topics that we are discussing. Don has been a guest. We will have him back soon, and it's always a great conversation. And like Don said, the more you check us out, the more you follow us, the algorithm definitely supports the work that we're doing. So thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm wondering when you're going to have me as a guest. But go on, let's take care of some business. You said, you know what?
Don, I used to be the great Charles Coleman when you introduced me. I don't know when I lost the greatness, but
you're the great Charles Coleman. Oh my gosh, you're so sensitive.
All good, my friend. No, all good.
So what do you think of these shenanigans today? Because this is outrageous. I mean, if these are not serious people, and if anybody should be testifying today or anytime, it should be Donald Trump. Where are Donald Trump and Melania Trump?
So this is it brings up a number of points. The first one is, as you said, these are not serious people, and the reason why these are not serious people, and this is reminiscent of what feels like a banana republic, is because you have a set of rules that are agreed upon by a committee. And then you have the very members of the committee who are participating in this interrogation of Hillary Clinton. And they are the ones who break the rules. The rules that they agreed to, the rules that were set, the rules that were negotiated, they're the ones who break them. And ostensibly, we can all expect that there'll be no accountability. There'll be no sort of repercussions for their breaking the rules. I chuckled when you talked about Lauren Boebert and the wanky wanky, because I don't know that I've ever heard that as part of a news program. But nonetheless, she has repeatedly shown herself as someone who lacks the seriousness to be a United States representative. Nonetheless, when you talk about the future of this investigation, I think tomorrow is going to be a very interesting moment, primarily because you will have a former president and Bill Clinton testifying before this committee. And what that does is it sets the precedent that there should be no one who is exempt from having to answer questions. Of course, I fully expect that the president is going to try and suggest that because he is a sitting president, he should not have to sit before this committee a la a January 6th. For everyone who's watching, please understand, there's no legal precedent that suggests that. There's no legal precedent that would mandate or exempt or shield him from having to sit before this committee and answer questions. And so don't think that there's any ironclad rule that protects him. This is nothing but a smokescreen that I expect him to try to use to avoid having to answer questions from this committee. So I do think that President Clinton sitting before this committee is going to be an important thing. But also, I would note, it's only as important and it's only as significant as Democrats make it. And what I mean by that is if Democrats do not take this as a way of applying pressure to this administration to say, look, we had a president who testified before this committee, and so where's your guy? Then it is going to be a failing in sort of letting them off the hook because they're going to try to avoid him testifying at all costs.
The thing is, we were talking about this, Charles, in our editorial meeting today, and we're saying that if this had happened, if a Democrat had done this to a Republican, it would be breaking news all day long on Fox News. That's all they would talk about. The slimy Democrats, scummy, undercover, breaking the rules, breaking the laws. What about the law? What about the Constitution? What about this? They're such fucking hypocrites. It's unbelievable. But the thing is that you won't see this on, I don't know if it's the lead story, if it's on all day on cable news. I think they're probably covering a bunch of different things, but this should be a huge story. This should be if I were in charge of a network, this would be the only story that I'm covering today, and not in the way that gives it false equivalence. This is some bullshit. And again, if this had been a Democrat, or imagine if it had been me. Imagine if a Democratic congressperson had sent me a photo of Melania Trump in a deposition that was supposed to be private, no cameras, what you think they would be trying to prosecute me? Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm just saying it's outrageous.
Don, I'm old enough to remember the fake fiasco that erupted after allegedly there was some controversy about you as an investigator, as a journalist, getting information about Jesse Smollett, and that being a whole big deal. That was nothing that people tried to make something out of. And when you talk about the hypocrisy here, what happened to drain the swamp? At the end of the day, this is a president who 48 hours ago, you and I talked on this very platform, and we were really speculating on how he would address the Epstein documents in his State of the Union. We saw 1 hour and 48 minutes of this man saying nothing with these victims present in the galley around the Epstein documents at all. And yet and still, media has largely not touched the fact that this was a complete omission. So in a lot of ways, the hypocrisy is not only apparent, but it is the fault of so many people who have microphones for not keeping the pressure on, as you've already talked about. This is the story of the day. And it's the story of the day on a global perspective, because as you look around, there are other countries who have taken measures to take action against pedophiles. And the fact that we have sort of engaged this space of cover up with the DOJ is not a good look for America. I'm still on the fact that we allowed the president to have a State of the Union where he did not touch this, he did not comment on it, and there has been very little follow-up by mainstream media. And I say that as someone who's a part of mainstream media, because at the end of the day, the credibility of these platforms really rests on being able to dig into these types of stories. I think that it's absolutely a headline story. I think it's absolutely something that needs to be discussed. And regardless of how the White House tries to meander their way through it, it's something that requires pressure from the public. We cannot lose the plot on the fact that we have had some of the most powerful people in this country who have been connected to a ring of pedophilia. I know that that sounds insane. I know it sounds conspiracy theory-like, but it is the reality of what we have seen. And that deserves interrogation. It deserves exploration. It deserves exploration. It deserves investigation. And right now, we're not seeing any of it. So there's a high degree of hypocrisy from this administration talking about how they're going to prioritize crime, how they're going to empty the swamp. And yet and still, when it comes to one of the biggest sort of collusions of our time, we're seeing nothing.
Well, they can't empty or drain the swamp because they're in the swamp. If they drain the swamp, they'd be, flushing themselves out. I want to read this, and then you can. You're an attorney. You can take me through this. This is Secretary Hillary Clinton. I posted this on Substack. This is her opening statement to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. She said, "Mr. Chairman, ranking member, members of the committee, as a former senator, I have respect for legislative oversight, and I expect its exercise, as do the American people, to be principled and fearless in pursuit of truth and accountability. As we all know, however, too often, congressional investigations are partisan political theater, which is an abdication of duty and an insult to the American people. The committee justified its subpoena to me based on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that." Basically, she's saying, I don't know shit. I don't know why you have me here. This is a farce. This is purely a political exercise. And I'm reading in there that you should be talking to someone who actually has some connection, like President Donald Trump. And then she says, "Like every decent person, I have been horrified by what I have learned about their crimes. It is unfortunate that Mr. Epstein initially got a slap on the wrist in 2008, which allowed him to continue his predatory practices for another decade. That slap on the wrist was by someone who is now a Trump associate." But what do you take from that statement? And I believe it is a Trump associate. It's Alex Acosta, correct?
Correct. I do see this as a question of Alex Acosta being one of the people who has to be on the list of the committee in terms of who they bring in to talk to, because without his testimony, Don, this whole thing is really a facade. And we all know that the veneer of political theater that this has become is very, very thick, but it will only be added to. You cannot have a conversation about Wexner, for example, who's really sort of the entryway for Jeffrey Epstein to everyone who he's connected to, and then learn that Wexner was never spoken to by the DOJ before these files came out, and not talk to Acosta as someone who was chiefly responsible for his original prosecution. That does not make any sense whatsoever. I think the other sort of thing that's interesting here is Clinton's language in this sort of letter that she is penning, not only to be a part of the record, but to be a part of the annals of history, because that's exactly what it will be. Hillary Clinton has been before Congress because to the right, the Clinton and the Biden name, they're not just red meat for their base. It's like filet mignon for them. But if you recall, we've seen this movie before, and it does not end well for the right. When she went before the congressional committee that wanted to investigate her around the many things that they asked her about, it was a masterclass. And at the end of the day, it was BTA. I'm not going to say what that is. If you want to look up what BTA is, belt to something. It's belt to your derriere. And that's exactly what she gave them, because Hillary Clinton is a lot of things.
You can say belt to ass.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. And Hillary Clinton is a savant when it comes to being able to communicate, when it comes to being able to answer questions. She's a very, very skilled lawyer, and she's not going to rope herself in to the type of gotcha moment that the right would like. And so in many respects, I'm watching today and I'm watching tomorrow, and I'm wondering whether this will actually backfire on House Republicans who are looking to make this more of a spectacle than it already has become.
Some folks came out after when there was a break in the hearings, and Democratic leaders who came out. Let me hold on one second before I do that, Charles. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me just look through this, and I want to say, I want to make sure. Let's go. So I want to go here. Back to the statement. Mr. Chairman, your investigation is supposed to be assessing the federal government's handling of the investigations and prosecutions of Epstein and his crimes. You subpoenaed 8 law enforcement officials, all of whom ran the Department of Justice or directed the FBI when Epstein's crimes were investigated and prosecuted. Of those 8, only 1 appeared before the committee. 5 of the 6 former attorneys general were, I'm glad she used attorney generals, because I hate it when people say attorney generals. It's attorneys general. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. Attorneys general were allowed to submit brief statements stating they had no information to provide. You have had 0 public hearings, refused to allow the media to attend them, including today, despite espousing the need for transparency on dozens of occasions. You have made little effort to call the people who show up prominently in the Epstein files: Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Howard Lutnick, Steve Bannon. And when you did, not a single Republican member showed up for Les Wexner's deposition. That is an opening statement, and I'm not done yet. She's calling them out in the first couple of paragraphs, Charles.
She's absolutely challenging the legitimacy of this investigation in ways that are really important, because at the end of the day, you can say whatever you want to say, Don. I can say whatever I want to say. We can all be commentators from the outside. Now you're talking about someone who's been on the inside, who was subpoenaed, and who cooperated with the subpoena, whose words will have a part in the official record in terms of exploring and noting for the public, illuminating for the public, the inadequacy of this investigation and how it has truly and ultimately been a sham thus far. And so there will be no room for people in hindsight to say, well, we don't really know where the investigation fell short. What Hillary Clinton has done in this letter is lay out very clearly the ways that this investigation has not only been one-sided, but completely lost entire credibility among what it is supposed to allegedly be doing. And so I think that not just for the American public, but for the preservation of the record, this letter is important. But if I'm honest, it does its job, but it's the responsibility, I said this before, of Democratic leadership to take the points that she has laid out, to take the dots that she has put forth and connect them for the American people, and to drive them home in a way that does not allow the GOP to simply continue to do this and to get away with it. She's done her part. as someone who's on the inside. And now those other folks who are at the levels of power have to do their part to keep the pressure on so that they don't get away with this sham of an inquisition.
Sham of an inquisition. I like the way you put that, Charles Coleman, because it is a sham of an inquisition, and she did point it out. Charles, stand by. 2 minutes. Word from our sponsors. We're back with Charles Coleman and more about Hillary Clinton and also this scheme. Charles, you know about this story, right? To steal the election in the
voting
midterms.
story. This is
It
crazy.
is outrageous. And I told you, I've been saying,
deal.
I think maybe
this is such a big deal. And combined with the SAVE Act just passing through Congress, this is such a big deal. I can't wait to talk about it.
Okay. A word from our sponsors. 2 minutes. This episode is brought to you by Wild Grain. It's the first bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and fresh pastas. Already in 25 minutes or less. Now, I've tried the sourdough loaf, the croissants, and the fresh pasta. The croissants, incredible, flaky, buttery, bakery quality right out of my own oven. And the sourdough has that real slow fermented flavor that you just don't get from the store. Wild Grain uses simple ingredients that you can pronounce. No preservatives, no shortcuts. Their boxes are fully customizable, including gluten-free, vegan, and a protein box. Amazing. Right now, get $30 off of your first box plus free croissants for life at wildgrain.com/lemon. That's wildgrain.com/lemon. $30 off of your first order and free croissants at wildgrain.com/lemon. Use the promo code lemon at checkout. Today's episode of the Don Lemon Show is sponsored by Surfshark. Surfshark is a fast, modern VPN that keeps your data safe online. Whether you're at home or on public Wi-Fi, it encrypts your information so hackers cannot get your passwords, messages, or private files. Now, what I like is how easy it is. You download it, connect, and it automatically picks the fastest server. One subscription covers unlimited devices, so your phone, your laptop, your tablet, all protected. Surfshark also includes an email scam checker that flags phishing attempts, plus alerts if your personal data shows up in leaked databases. That means you can change your passwords before someone takes over your accounts. They cover 100 countries and offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So go to surfshack.com/DonLemon. Use the code DonLemon to get 4 extra months free. That's surfshark.com/DonLemon, code DonLemon. It's to our sponsors. Okay, so let's discuss a little bit more. Back now with Charles Coleman. Charles, I want to continue to read from this, and then we're going to get to this whole election thing. Hillary Clinton goes on to say, this institutional failure is designed to protect one political party and one public official. I wonder who she was talking about. Rather than to seek truth and justice for the victims and survivors, as well as the public who also want to get to the bottom of this matter. My heart breaks for the survivors, and I am furious on their behalf. I have spent my life advocating for women and girls. I have worked hard to stop the terrible abuses so many women and girls face here and around the world, including human trafficking, forced labor, and sexual slavery. For too long, these have been largely invisible crimes or not treated as crimes at all, but the survivors are real and they are entitled to better. And then she goes on to talk about the work that she has done. And she's right, the work that she's done around that. She talked about the work she's done around some of the girls and when people who had been trafficked and how they were AIDS, they were dying of AIDS. She talked about her work in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe and on and on and on. And she says, if you are new to this issue, let me tell you, Jeffrey Epstein was a heinous individual, but he is far from alone. This is not a one-off tabloid sensation or a political scandal. It is a global scourge with an unimaginable human toll. Let me tell you this, Charles. Let me posit this to you, because this is the gang who can't shoot straight or couldn't shoot straight or can't shoot straight at this point. So I believe that this will be a self-own, Charles. I think this is going to backfire on them. I also believe that this sets a precedent, that a president can be called in front of members of Congress or the Senate or be deposed. And Donald Trump will be, if he doesn't do what he's going to do in the next story we're going to talk about, a lame duck come November of 2026 of this year, and he too may be called in front of Congress to discuss his role and his connection with Jeffrey Epstein and these victims, possibly.
Well, Don, I want to zoom out for a minute and take about 60 seconds to try and give our viewers a very big picture of what we're looking at, and it's sobering. As a shameless plug, we discussed this last night on the Brothers Briefing, and this moment is truly a reflection of the fact that we live in an America that does not care about women and girls. And I say that because the comments that were made by Hillary Clinton reflect an indifference to the survivors who were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein and the people he was associated with. But it also is reflective of a larger pattern that we've seen in MAGA land. If you think about the State of the Union, many of us may not have realized that the USA women's hockey team also won a gold, and they weren't invited to the State of the Union.
They were
and
not.
I'm using that as a metaphor for the disregard that this party and that this movement in MAGA has for women in America. And the reason why that's so important, not only to this story, but also to the next story around voting, is because this is a party that disregards quite comfortably the rights and the autonomy of women and of girls. And we see that reflected over and over again. And the problem, the connectivity between this and the next story, is that when you look at the exit poll numbers, and I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes here, there were an overwhelming number of white women who gave this man their support. And he continues to show how he feels about you. He continues to show through his party and his leadership that he doesn't give a damn about women and about their rights and about their protection. And so when Hillary Clinton talks about this in her letter, she's not just scratching the surface on her own accomplishments and accolades. What she's doing is holding up a mirror to this entire administration and this entire movement and what it is that they feel about women, which should strike a particular chord with women voters everywhere, particularly those who for some reason voted against their own interests and gave this man their support.
Charles, as I learned growing up, there's a phrase that says, "You ain't never lied. You ain't never lied about that." I mean, you're not stepping on anybody's toes. You're just telling the truth, because we know how black women voted in the election.
That's correct.
And we know how white women voted in the election. Many of them did vote.
Correct.
Not all of them. They're going to get, some of them are like, "Hey, don't count me. I'm not one of those. I did not do it." But just one more thing I want to read from Hillary Clinton's statement, and then we're going to move on because I want to hear from some of the lawmakers, especially the Democratic lawmakers. And she talks about her work in combating, and it's at the bottom of page 2. And she says, "As Secretary of State, I appointed a former federal prosecutor, Lou Sabaka, to ramp up our global anti-trafficking efforts. I oversaw nearly 170 anti-trafficking programs in 70 nations and directly pressed foreign leaders to crack down on trafficking networks in their countries. Every year, we published a global report to shine the light on abuses. The findings of those reports triggered sanctions on countries failing to make progress, so they became a powerful diplomatic tool to drive concrete action." I'm getting to this. There's a very important point here. "I insisted that the United States be included in that report for the first time ever in 2011, because we must hold ourselves not just to the same standard as the rest of the world, but to an even higher one. Sex trafficking and modern slavery should not have any place in America. None." And then on the next page, this is what's important. "Infuriatingly, the Trump administration gutted the Trafficking in Persons Office at the State Department, cutting more than 70% of the career civil and foreign service experts who work so hard to prevent trafficking crimes. The annual trafficking report required by law was delayed for months. The message from the Trump administration to American people and the world could not be clearer. Combating human trafficking is no longer an American priority under the Trump White House. This is a tragedy. It is a scandal, and it that deserves vigorous investigation and oversight. She is 100% correct. And it is outrageous that we are in this moment where they are covering up for a president of the United States. It reeks of a cover up. It reeks of a scandal. It looks like they're hiding something because they are hiding something. I don't know what it is, but we're only left to our own devices to guess and try to figure out logically if the person who is in the White House, who hired you basically, is mentioned in the Epstein files thousands and thousands and thousands of times, probably mentioned more than anyone except for the man himself, Jeffrey Epstein, and possibly Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, Don,
so what are you hiding? Why are you taking his name off? You saw the NPR report. So this is outrageous, Charles, that we're even living in this and that Americans are accepting this bullshit.
Well, think about this. Consider how much time and effort has been given by this administration to demonize illegal immigrants, to talk about Somalis, to talk about Haitians, to talk about Latinos, and make them less deserving of any humane treatment as we try to address the border crisis, all in an effect to distract from the protection of elite white men in this country. And so when you talk about like, what are you covering up? The hypocrisy literally jumps off the page in as much as you want to emphasize how tough you are on crime. You want to emphasize how strict you are going to be in terms of making sure that the law is followed and upheld. But what you're doing is clearly illustrating for everyone who can see, for anyone who can read, for anyone who can hear and think for themselves, that the people who are elite, the people who are your friends, the people who are like you, that is to say, white men who are powerful and elite, are exempt from this sort of interrogation. And that's what the message sends, and that's what it says. And the entire GOP that allows him to do this is complicit in this same regard. We talk about the two-tier justice system in America, and we are seeing it clearly on display in this very moment. Because for as much as you would like to demonize and dehumanize certain groups of people, because you're playing on the base notion of our humanity, you are ignoring what it is to lean into bigotry, to racism, to xenophobia. In this regard, it is to your extreme advantage because it keeps the focus off of some of the most dangerous predators that this country has ever seen.
And look, Hillary Clinton is that lady. That girl, I was going to say, when we say that B, she is. I mean, and I believe,
Shout out to Lizzo for the lyric you were about to say, but yes.
She is that, you know what? Because, look, Hillary Clinton was the most qualified person, I believe, to run for president in modern history.
Ever.
And the person following would be Kamala Harris. The most qualified person in modern history, Barack Obama, did not have as much experience as Hillary Clinton. When he came into office, he turned out to be a great president. But let's just be honest. Hillary Clinton has been around. She was the first lady of Arkansas. Then she was the first lady of the United States. And then she became a senator. And then she became Secretary of State. She is qualified as hell. A lot more qualified than Donald Trump. And then she talks about what she would do if she were in a position of power and what they should be doing. I didn't plan on reading this much of Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton is a bad, you know what? Shut your mouth. Here's what she said. She talked about that, it should be vigorously investigated. And then she says this. Let me get my cursor to work. This is a tragic scandal. There's investigation oversight. A committee endeavoring to stopping human trafficking would seek to understand that specific steps are needed to fix a system that allowed Epstein to get away with his crimes in 2008. A committee run by elected officials with a commitment to transparency would ensure the full release of all the files. I would ensure that the lawful redactions of those files protected the victims and survivors, not powerful men and political allies. It would get to the bottom of reports that the DOJ withheld FBI interviews in which a survivor accuses President Trump of heinous crimes. She's going there. It would subpoena anyone who asked on which night there would be the wildest party on Epstein Island. Who is she talking about? That is Elon Musk. Am I correct? That's who that is. It would demand testimony from prosecutors in Florida and New York about why they gave Epstein a sweetheart deal and chose not to pursue others who may have been implicated.
Don, I'm sorry, we have Clinton speaking live.
Is this her? She's speaking live. Go to it.
And a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet, that was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me. So I can only say that the best exchange that I had came at the very end, when, contrary to every other deposition they have taken, no Republican member asked any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell to anyone else they have deposed. And in fact, the Republican members didn't even show up for the deposition of Les Wexner. And when I said that, I had to point out that the only questions that any Republican member asked of any of the people they deposed was of former Attorney General Bill Barr, when Chairman Comer asked him about the allegations, in his view, about Russia's involvement in my election in 2016. So at the very end of this hearing, after I made that point, I want to commend Chairman Comer for raising a series of significant questions that I responded to about the nature of the investigation and the areas that I thought should be explored. So I appreciated that. I want to see the truth come out. So that was a reassuring way to end a very long, repetitive deposition.
Secretary, you spoke in your opening remarks about how heartbroken you have been for the Epstein survivors as these files have come out. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you have processed and reacted to the fact that the former president, your husband, Bill Clinton, is referenced in the Epstein files numerous times, including in some photos featuring women? And how have you been personally preparing for the deposition that is coming tomorrow? Are you 100% confident that there isn't anything that the former president knows about Epstein's crimes?
I am, and I think the chronology of the connection that he had with Epstein ended several years before anything about Epstein's criminal activities came to light, and that he was charged and sadly given a sweetheart deal, which, as I said in my statement, had that not happened, perhaps his predatory behavior could have been stopped earlier. But I think it is fair to say that the vast majority of people who had contact with him before his criminal pleas in 2008 were like most people. They did not know what he was doing. And I think that that is exactly what my husband will testify to tomorrow.
Madam Secretary,
do you believe this was a fair hearing, and do you still want to testify publicly, even though you gave this deposition?
Well, I'm not going to do it again. They had a chance to do it in public, and I wish they had done it in public. And I think they're making the wrong decision, avoiding doing it in public. I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that they asked literally the same questions over and over again, which didn't seem to me to be very productive. And then, as I said, toward the end, there were other questions that were totally off subject. So if they are going to fulfill their responsibility to literally investigate the investigations, which is what they originally said was the scope of their work, I think they could have spent the day more productively.
Madam Secretary, what was your reaction?
Madam Secretary.
Can I ask, why was Colleen Maxwell invited to the daughter of Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2012? She'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by the junior chief before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the +1, the guest of someone who was invited.
Madam Secretary, could you tell us your reaction, please, to the photos of your husband in the hot tub and in the swimming pool?
What message does it say that President Trump was
I
not
don't
called
know
to
when the video will be out. I don't know when the transcript will be out. We've asked that they be out as quickly as possible, and then you can see.
Madam
You can
Secretary,
see
what was your
everything.
reaction
Thank
to your
you.
husband's photos in the hot tub? We heard from Bill Gates concerns about Epstein trying to blackmail.
Okay, there is, you heard Hillary Clinton there speaking in front of, you guys can hear me, right? Producers?
Yeah, we got you.
You got me. Okay, just want to make sure. That's Hillary Clinton speaking there just moments ago, talking about what happened with her today. She said she was asked the same questions over and over. She was trying to get to the bottom of what happened, Charles. And she said it was a farce. She said, "Why they should have done this publicly. I'm not going to do it again." But she raises some very important points. And she came out, she was very calm. Look, I'm more fired up than she was. But she's very calm and very composed and said, "This is what happened, and I know nothing." And I think everything that she said in her statement really lays out that this is the farcical nature of this. This is a show, and it is ridiculous. What did you take away from her her little press briefing right there?
I'm going to recycle my earlier statement that she basically said this was a sham inquisition, and she pointed out the inadequacies for people who are not sophisticated enough to read between the very big lines of what we sort of learned today. She basically said, look, the transcript is going to be out. I'm not doing this again. They had an opportunity to do this publicly. They did not. So anyone who's objectively paying attention can take Hillary Clinton's comments and understand how, in fact, this interrogation, this investigation has not passed muster in terms of what it was supposed to achieve. Now, of course, I will remind viewers that for those folks who are thinking about how the right is going to respond, please understand that they don't care, that this will be as anticlimactic for them as they will try to sort of suggest, because in their minds, the Clintons, the Bidens, they're all sort of in cahoots and in collusion together to destroy the country. So don't expect that anything that Hillary Clinton has said will break through to the right, because for those people who have decided that they are MAGA acolytes and sycophants for Trump, they are simply going to be like talking to a brick wall. But for anyone who is really objectively watching this and trying to interpret what they should take away from today, you heard Hillary Clinton talk, you heard her identify the inadequacies and the myriad holes in this investigation. And quite frankly, I don't expect the Republicans to say much of anything because they don't have an answer, and they won't have an answer. That's where I think that it's upon Democratic leadership, as well as members of the media, to take the dots that she has laid out, to continue to apply the pressure and to ask the necessary questions in order to try to get some of the things that she pointed out addressed. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I know that she did a remarkable job from what we've seen thus far in terms of responding to this sham of an interrogation and an investigation that Republicans have put forth.
I want to put something up just real quickly, and this is coming from Tommy Vitor, and he's saying the DOJ is deleting photos of members of Trump's cabinet and FBI interviews with Trump's accusers from the Epstein files. And this is something from Jmail World will Drive. The DOJ removed this photo of what appears to be Howard Lutnick. You can still access it on Jmail. This is an active cover-up, Charles. It's an active cover-up.
Well, Don, this was the problem with the entire Epstein file saga on this very platform. I don't remember the day, but I talked about the fact that we were headed for something that was anticlimactic, because regardless of whatever has been provided, we've got millions of documents there was still going to be a segment of the public which was rightfully skeptical. I want to say that again, rightfully skeptical about what was and was not turned over. And here it is, plain as day, we are starting to see, in fact, that those concerns were valid, and it were as valid as we suspected initially, because this DOJ has been essentially unabashed in their disregard for the law and for procedure. Now, from a legal perspective, the DOJ, the people responsible, have broken the law. If in fact this is what's happening, if in fact there are photos that are being deleted, this violates. They're already 2 months into breaking the law because they have not turned over everything in accordance with the Epstein Transparency Act. But they are in further violation of the law if they continue to withhold and to destroy evidence. There's something in the law called spoliation. And spoliation of evidence.
Yeah.
Spoliation of evidence is when you tamper with, destroy, or otherwise withhold evidence that is supposed to be turned over. The question becomes, and this is the difficult one, who will be responsible for holding the DOJ responsible? And it's a very precarious question because at the beginning of this entire saga, when the Epstein Transparency Act was passed, one of the questions that I had was, can we trust the DOJ to do what it is that Congress has now mandated by law that they are responsible for doing? And I knew then, and it is confirmed now, that the answer was a resounding no. But who will hold them accountable? There are mechanisms that would allow the executive branch to put in place a special prosecutor, perhaps, to go about this, or for the DOJ to put in place a special prosecutor. But effectively, what you are asking is for the criminals to police themselves. And I don't say that hyperbolically. I don't say that flippantly. I say it because it is the reality of where we are around this. And so for the victims, keeping them first and foremost in our minds, it is a complete miscarriage of justice. But for the American people who are watching this unfold and understanding that you're dealing with an administration and a Department of Justice that has blatantly shown everyone in plain view that they feel like they are above the law, they are the biggest losers here.
Oh my gosh, so much breaking news happening here on the Don Lemon Show today. We had breaking news this coming from reports that they are actively covering up or removing information from the Epstein files. This is according to J-Mail and Tommy Vitor. He's saying the DOJ is deleting photos of members of Trump's cabinet and FBI interviews with Trump's accusers from the Epstein files. The DOJ removed this photo. There's a photo of Howard Lutnick that you see right there. What appears to be Howard Lutnick, I should say, what appears to be Howard Lutnick, and you can access it on J-Mail. And Hillary Clinton spoke out just moments ago in front of the very place, the Performing Arts Center in Chappaqua, where she faced questions from Republican and Democratic congressional leaders today. Watch.
I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times. It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet, that was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me.
Crazy. Pizzagate.
UFO.
We're going to talk more. Yeah, crazy. A little bit more about this, Charles, because there's something fascinating that I want to talk to you about. But first, I need to get a word in from our sponsors. Support comes from MSI Reproductive Choices. Now, here's something that's really important. If all women had access to reproductive health care, unintended pregnancies, unsafe abortions, and pregnancy-related deaths would drop by 2/3. That means healthier mothers, healthier babies, healthier communities. MSI is a global leader in reproductive health with a strong focus on data and impact. They also point out that every $1 spent on contraceptive services saves about $3 in maternal, newborn, and abortion care costs. That's real economic impact for families, and governments. Your gift of $39 provides contraception for 6 women for a full year. They rely on donor support to help. So you can go to msiunitedstates.org. That's msiunitedstates.org, or text LEMON to 511-511. Text LEMON to 511-511, or go to msiunitedstates.org. Text fees may apply. Support comes from Shopify. When I started the Don Lemon Show, I had to figure out everything: branding, merch, logistics. It can feel overwhelming when you're building something new, and that's where Shopify comes in. Shopify is a commerce platform behind millions of businesses and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. We use Shopify to bring you the merch that you love. It makes everything simpler. With ready-to-use templates, built-in AI tools that help write product descriptions and improve images, plus integrated email and social campaigns, Shopify helps you grow without losing your mind. And it handles the hard stuff: inventory, international shipping, returns, all of it. So if you're ready to sell, you are ready for Shopify. Start your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/lemon. That's shopify.com/lemon. Thanks to our sponsors. Back now with Charles Coleman. Charles, we're going to continue to follow the breaking news as it relates to Hillary Clinton. And look, I thought the most interesting thing, the biggest breaking news today would be, Lauren Boebert's actions. But to hear, I think her opening statement, which she read, or amazing. And
Don, I think we're losing your audio.
Can you guys still hear me?
We have you now. You were going in and out.
Okay, good. Okay. I think that her performance and the way she conducted herself at that press conference was masterful. And so there's a lot going on. But Charles, just real quickly, because we promised this, and I brought you on really to talk to you about this. Let's put this up. This is an exclusive from the Washington Post. Trump seeking executive power over elections is urged to declare emergency. Activists who say they are in coordination with the White House are circulating a draft executive order that would unlock extraordinary presidential power over voting. This is the thing that I warned you about. They're going to continue to do this, and they won't stop until they get something done. Pro-Trump activists who say they are in coordination with the White House are circulating a 17-page draft executive order that claims China interfered in the 2020 election as a basis to declare a national emergency that would unlock extraordinary presidential power over the election. They're trying to steal the election, Charles.
Every accusation in the State of the Union, Don, was an admission. And I'm talking about everything that we heard from the president about fraud, everything that we heard from the president about crime, and everything that we heard from the president about stealing elections. Every accusation that was made during that hour and 148 minutes was an admission. And for anyone who needs the dots connected, we saw federal officials go down to Fulton County, Georgia, and take 700 boxes of ballots. And we saw the presence of Tulsi Gabbard. And we all wondered, what in the world was Tulsi Gabbard doing there? And now we know. Tulsi Gabbard was there in order to help substantiate the notion of foreign interference in the election in such a way that would justify the executive branch trying to be able to siphon away the power from the states in order to federalize United States elections. And to your point, Don, all of this points to the notion of being able to steal and to rig elections. There's another important piece here, and that is the SAVE Act. When I talked to you 2 days ago on this very show, I mentioned that I expected the president to mention the SAVE Act during his State of the Union, and he did. And for people who don't know, the SAVE Act is essentially the piece of legislation that requires certain pieces of documentation to register and to vote in America. Now, on the surface, this administration has pushed the notion that is to prevent fraud and to prevent widespread sort of inaccuracies with voting, none of which, I repeat, have been substantiated by any source at a level that would require federal legislation in order to correct. And so when the president leans on Republicans in the Senate to try and move the SAVE Act because it's already passed in the House, what he is doing is providing further cover for himself in order to take this power away from the states and move forward with a movement to federalize our elections, putting him in charge of where this country goes. This could not be a more threatening, a more important, and a more dangerous place for the future of free and fair elections in America. And I don't say that for people to sort of take with a grain of salt or think that I'm exaggerating. I'm saying it because, to your point, Don, we are watching it in real time. Please understand, if you are someone who is seeing this, the midterms are the test case. That is not the end. That is not the goal. That is the beginning. The midterms that are coming up in November are the test case to see how much they can get away with it and what they need to do to make things run in 2028 for them to run the table. And so it is incredibly curious that we're watching all of these things coalesce at the same time. It's not accidental. It's not coincidental. This is something that ultimately, my prediction here is literally, I've said it before, I will continue to say it, America's future is in the hands of the judiciary. America's future is in the hands of the judiciary. And this is a perfect example, because not if, but when Donald Trump enacts this executive order, ultimately, it is going to be up to the Supreme Court of the United States of America to decide whether that executive order will stand or be struck down. And when you're talking about one of our most important democratic tools, obviously the cornerstone of American democracy is the notion of free and fair elections. If you take that away, if you change the nature of it that puts it in the hands of the executive, all of that will collapse. And so we can go past the executive order. I know the Washington Post put out this exclusive. I'm pretty much counting that as one in the bag, meaning that the executive order, it's not a debate about if it's coming. I'm predicting that it's coming.
Amen.
It's done. What I'm saying is that what we have to look to is if the Supreme Court has enough intestinal fortitude to stand up the same way they did with the tariffs to say, you cannot do this. Because without it, you can kiss these elections goodbye.
Amen. Charles, I mean, this is unbelievable. The breaking news that we have up now, Donald Trump is trying to control the 2026 elections. We told you. I hate to say I told you so on this one, but I told you so on this one. This is Mr. Charles Coleman. He is an MS Now legal analyst, a former prosecutor and a civil rights attorney, the great Charles Coleman. Thank you, sir. I mean, we had some breaking news this morning. I had breaking news yesterday. This is crazy. Every day is something. As Michael Jackson said, you want to be starting something. You got to be starting something every single day, this administration.
Indeed. This is, when Steve Bannon says flood the zone, That's is what he meant. This is what they're doing. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Appreciate it. Absolutely. Check out Charles. Charles's social. Check out his show as well. Okay, everyone. Let me tell you about this. Because if you want to know anything about the Don Lemon Show, here's what you have to do. And it's very simple. And there's some good news to tell you about. By the way, the engagement has been so great. And the engagement was so good today. It's like unbelievable. Unbelievable in a good way. So thank you for that. Lemonheads. You should be very proud. You should be very proud of your awards. 2 NAACP Image Awards. I mean, y'all are just showing out. So let me tell you this. You guys have been asking for it. Go to donlemon.com if you want to know anything about the show. But if you go to the top of donlemon.com, if you just go down a little bit, you see that now every show sells out. And then people end up like, oh, I didn't get tickets. And we go on the website. You guys asked for it because this started as just a test, a little trial with D.L. Hughley and me. And DL and DL, anything goes. We are starting our tour around the country. DL and DL, anything goes. So we're going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina on April 3rd, okay? Raleigh, North Carolina, April 3rd. Cleveland, Ohio on April 4th. Boston, Massachusetts on April 17th. Tysons, Virginia on April 18th. And that is just the beginning. So these are moderately sized arenas. So if you want to get your tickets, get them now while they're cheaper because they'll go up or you'll start getting the ticket brokers at the only places you'll be able to buy them. So go check it out. Raleigh, Raleigh, North Carolina, 4-3. Cleveland, Ohio, 4-4. Boston, Massachusetts, 4-17. Tysons, Virginia, 4-18. Man, I'm going to be hoofing it out here on these independent streets. So go check it out. All you have to do is go to donlemon.com. And while you're at donlemon.com, if you go scroll down a little bit, you can go check out our watch page. That's YouTube. Become a subscriber or a member there, free or you are paid. Also on Twitch, twitch.com, twitch.tv/Don Lemon. But the thing that says stream all the way to the right at the bottom, that is that little quote sign. That's where you go and check out Twitch. And also, if you go down a little bit, Substack is there at the bottom as well. And you can become a free subscriber, free member there, or a paid subscriber, paid member. The same thing on Substack as well as Twitch. So if you are a subscriber or a member on YouTube, you can do, I encourage you to go over to the other sites, okay? Is there more? Someone is telling me there is more breaking news. More breaking news. I just heard about this. Okay, before we get off the air, or before we stop our stream, we have some breaking news. The New York Times is reporting that Netflix said on Thursday that it will not counter Paramount's higher bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, a stunning development that essentially assures the media giant will end up under the control of technology heir David Ellison, the folks who own CBS now, they own Paramount, and that means Trump gets CNN. Y'all know what I'm thinking, right? Thank you, Lord. Oh my gosh. When a door closes, you never know what the Lord has in store for you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for saving me from that bullshit. Oh my gosh. Y'all know what I'm thinking, and you're thinking it as well. You never know. You think something is what they meant for bad or evil, God meant for good. Thank you, Lord. I feel bad because of the consolidation of conservative media, but I can take a little bit of glee in this because this is a crazy turn. If this happens, man, my former colleagues, damn, I feel bad. Sorry. Okay. Thank you for that, everyone. Thank you for watching. Be informed without being inundated until I see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time here on the Don Lemon Show on the Don Lemon channel. Oh, check out the merch store, okay? But until I see you then, turn the TV off. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a show. We're live every weekday at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time with new clips dropping at 2 p. and 8 p. And if you want even more Don Lemon Show content, join the Lemon community. Members get exclusive posts, behind-the-scenes videos, and live chats just for you. So hit the join button or visit our channel page to sign up. Thanks again for all your love and your support, and I'll see you next time.